Today's video is sponsored by Elementara. Transform 5e with an entire elemental magic system and a horde of new character options. Thanks to our sponsors, Hit Point Press. Check out their big bad bundles. Link in the description below. Alright guys, Jameson and Alex here. Today we're talking about the Circle of Crystals Druid from Crystalpunk, which is kind of a cyberpunk fantasy arcane crystal crossover, so it kind of gets the feel of cyberpunk but stays within the fantasy kind of setting. If you're new to the channel, what we're going to do is go through all the abilities gained in the subclass, then we're going to rate the roleplay, combat, and synergy based on how the abilities gained in the subclass improve on the base class abilities.
Indeed.
And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to be entered in our D&D Beyond Players Bundle giveaway.
Free stuff is always wonderful.
That being said, let's just get straight into it. Alex, what do we get?
We're going to get some diamond skin, as you are one with the crystal.
They say diamonds are forever.
You could be, with the way this is designed. While you're not wearing any armor, your AC is 12 plus your wisdom modifier.
I'll take it.
But it also specifies you can use a shield and still gain this benefit. So you can be armored up with crystals and still have a shield and be very, very thick person. Also, you can use any of these crystals as a spell casting focus for your druid spells. So there's no, stealing a spellcaster's spell casting focus and they can't do that. It's like, oh, these crystals growing on your body. You're like, spell! right off the chest. Say it with your chest. Yeah. We're also going to get some circle spells, and you're going to see a very interesting combination of things that aren't normally access to druids, or giving them things they normally have access to, making them free because Divine Casters. We're going to get Guiding Bolt and Shield fresh off the gate, which are two of my personal favorite level 1 spells.
Very nice.
Blindness, Deafness, Spike Growth, Counterspell. Woo. Oh boy, free counterspells. As far as not having to prepare them or know them, you know what I mean. Meld to Stone, Stone Shape, Stone Skin, Hold Monster, and Wall of Stone, because, diamonds, stones, aligned carbons. Crystals.
Makes sense.
Yep.
And then getting into one of the other major components to this subclass is Crystallize. As a bonus action, you can expend a use of your wild shape to conjure a chunk of crystals within 30 feet of you, rather than transforming. These crystals last for 1 minute, or until you lose concentration, at which point the crystal shatters and turn into a fine dust. You have 3 different options to choose from. First is Encasing Crystal. The crystals grow out of the body of a creature within range and restrict their movement. Must make a strength save or be restrained for the duration. At the end of each of its turns, the target can repeat the saving throw, destroying crystals and ending the effect on a success. Second option is Shielding Crystals. Crystals grow on the body or armor of a willing creature within range, which grants them resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage from non-magical attacks that aren't adamantine for the duration. And then lastly, and my personal favorite, Refracting Crystals. The crystals appear out of the ground within range as a medium-sized magical object for the duration. Once per turn, when you cast a spell with a range of 10 feet or more, you can cause the spell to refract through the crystals, providing they're within 30 feet of you and you can see them. If you do, the spell is cast through the crystal space, and you can use the crystal's line of sight when casting the spell, potentially allowing you to target creatures behind corners or at an extended range. Also, you gain a 2d4 bonus to one roll of the spell, which must restore hit points or be a damage roll. If it is a damage roll for radiant damage, it increases to 2d6. So a little bit extra utility with those spells, casting around corners and extended range.
I love the interesting options that creates for you for all 3. Plenty of choices at that. Next up, we have Crystal Beacon. You can use your action to detach one of the crystals, placing it within the ground to be used as a beacon. You can have a number of these beacons active at any time equal to your wisdom modifier. If you try to place more, the oldest one you place shatters. You can always sense the direction of each of your individual crystals, so as long as they are on the same plane that you are. In addition, the Channel Senses spell, which is a new spell specifically to the book, is always prepared for you and doesn't count against your spells known, so more free spells for a druid. When you cast it, your beacon serves as sigils for the spell, and if you target one of your beacons, you can cast it without expending a spell slot. When you cast this way, the range is unlimited.
So just a quick look at the spell on here is Channel Senses. It's Divination School, 1 action to cast. You channel the senses of a willing creature within range. Choose 2 senses between sight, hearing, touch, smell, and taste. For the duration, you lose the chosen sense and instead receive the sense from the target. You or the target can choose to end the spell at any time for the duration. While channeling a creature's sight, you can cast spells as though you were in the target's creature's space, provided the target allows you to do so. Alternatively, you can have the sense be derived from a chosen object and or have the sense be emitted through a chosen object, which ties in with this ability for the other effect. To derive a sense from an object, you must first mark it with a flat sigil, which you do as an action so long as you have the ability to cast a spell. You can have a number of these sigils active at any time equal to 1 plus your spellcasting mod. The sigils glow dim light with 1 foot radius, are noticed easily, and can be destroyed with little effort. To emit a sense through an object, you must touch it as part of casting a spell, and you can only choose the sight of or hearing senses when you cast a spell this way. The object then displays a holographic picture or emits audio for the duration based on your chosen sense. The range of the spell can be extended through arcane infrastructures, or, like for example, with this feature. And then if you upcast it, you can choose an additional sense for every spell slot above first level, and the spell lasts up to 8 hours if you upcast it. So if you don't do it through there and you cast it normally, you have these effects, but you have the changes based on if you do it through the class feature.
It seems like it's like a slightly weaker version of scrying, but basically with some extra limitations and things like that.
Yeah, it's kind of like a mixture between programmable image and or programmed illusion, I guess it is, and scrying. It's kind of got some similarities as well.
We also have resistant gems at level 10, which give you advantage on saving throws against being paralyzed, petrified, poisoned, or stunned, and you have the resistance to poisoned and radiant damage.
Yes, definitely comes into play, which I will get to later on.
That's correct.
A reflect attack is your capstone with this one. You can use your reaction to reflect an attack back to the attacker when it's an attack from a creature you can see. You take no damage from the attack, then you make a melee or ranged spell attack against the original attacker based on the original attack. On a hit, they take the damage you would have taken along with any additional effects that would have been inflicted by the attack. Alternatively, when you successfully interrupt a spell that would have targeted you with counterspell, you can change the target of the spell to the original caster instead of having the spell fail. If the spell had concentration, you must then concentrate on it. Once you use either option, you can't use this feature again until you finish a short or long rest. So buff up that counterspell. I'll take it any day. So those are all the abilities. So let's get right into the rating portion. First up is the roleplay asterisk, as always. Talking about roleplay, we're talking about interacting with the world around you, interacting with NPCs, non-combat scenarios, avoiding combat, basically things outside of the initiative order. Not talking about your class fantasy, history, lore, background. That's on you as a player. We can't rate you, but we can rate the abilities gained in the subclass, how they might improve your potential in those role-play scenarios.
That's right.
So, looking at the subclass, you get some good spells, for sure. Though most of them are going to be more focused on the combat side of things. But you have, blindness, deafness, stone shape, wall of stone. Some of that kind of thing can definitely come into play.
A lot of the stone ones have use in RP, for sure.
Right. Then you have some niche wild shape for chases, traps, kind of thing like that. If you're trying to, trigger a trap and it's like a spike trap or something, give somebody resistance to BPS. That'll help overcome that. And if you're being chased, you restrain somebody chasing you and you just get away. So there's some niche use for sure for chases and things like that. And then the resistance to conditions can come into play. It falls again more onto the niche side of things, maybe with traps or avoiding certain kind of spellcasters, things like that could lock you up to prevent you in a chase kind of thing. And then we have the channel senses crystal beacon kind of thing going on with that other ability, which is definitely a huge RP ability for that. Again, kind of like a scry programmed illusion kind of deal on there. So all that being said, we went with a 3 out of 5 for the roleplay. Some nice options. Some of them are a bit on the niche side, though.
Sure. On to the combat side of things, which very quickly that this thing is going to excel in combat with the options you get. Again, getting access to spells that druids normally don't have access to, like Guiding Bolt and Shield. Those are two, and this is a point I made to Jameson. We were discussing this beforehand. Something that makes level 1 and 2 spells very interesting and favorites of mine is how well they hold their value as you level. Because a lot of lower level spells, you get into like the level 10, 12, 13, 14, levels of your character, they feel just kind of bad to cast in combat.
Right.
Well, Shield is never bad because you're giving yourself +5 to your AC. That's always wonderful. And Guiding Bolt's damage is 4d6. It's not terrible, but it also grants a next attack advantage.
Right.
Those are two of the better level 1 spells that hold their value later into campaigns. And then I'm burying the lead, I guess, a little there with Counterspell. Druids don't normally have access to Counterspell. And not only does this get Counterspell, it used to do more fun things with Counterspell, which we will get to. And then, obviously the other things that are here, like Stone Skin and Hold Monster, because my love of hold spells and dominate spells and how absolutely just tide-turning they can be if you're able to paralyze. Even if it just lasts for a turn, you basically force somebody to skip their turn altogether. It's worth it, even if it just hits for one turn, every time. With the Crystallize using your wild shape, I love the fact that this subclass gives you not just one additional choice for your wild shape, but technically 3. Right. Both of us agree that the refracting crystals will be the most common use.
That's the go-to.
Because it not only gives you extra damage for your spells, but it gives you a different point of angle to give you extra range to your spells, and also be able to get around corners and things like that. If you can't see them because there's a tree in your line of sight, but your crystal's 30 feet over there and it can see it, so it's like Guiding Bolt and just geometry over here. Yes. And fire, ricochet the sucker kind of thing, for flavor purposes. Just Absolutely. Like you're just geometrying things all over the place with these refracting crystals, and it's fantastic. But the other two still have purpose and niche use where they're going to be used, because if you do have a chance to restrain something, especially if it's a smaller, agile, quick thing and may not have a great strength, you wouldn't think, just based on its build and things, like be able to hold it in place so it can't be running around the battlefield and causing problems
or whatever. Lock down a spellcaster.
Or if you've got a sorcerer wizard type back there lobbing fireballs at people, it's like, oh, you want to try to run away from my barbarian friend or my paladin friend? No, stay right there. You just make these little crystal shoes and you don't get to go anywhere. And again, the shielding crystals, if you wanted to give them to yourself, or more commonly, if you don't have a super traditional tanky character, if you don't have a barbarian fighter paladin in your group, and maybe there's a cleric with medium armor and a shield who's kind of your best frontline option, maybe you just want to help them absorb
some more survivability.
Give some survivability. Again, there's options. Love options. The crystal beacons aren't going to be a huge thing for combat, primarily for RP-based things. Maybe you gain some knowledge that you could later learn in combat, because maybe somebody's chasing you because you go back and look a mile behind you where you dropped a crystal and you see you're being chased by an army of people. Oh, we know we don't need to be staying here.
Right.
We can keep going. So again, some knowledge, but that's about the extent there. Obviously, the resistant gems is nothing exciting, but you get resistance or advantage on 4 different conditions: paralyzed, petrified, poisoned, and stunned. And 3 of those are awful conditions to be put upon yourself. And of course, resistance to poison damage. It's a common resistance. You're never upset to get resistances. And radiant damage. Radiant damage is not common, but it also is rarely resisted.
Right.
So it's very impactful when you do have it. It's like, oh, take that. Okay, then there's this wonderful capstone that just makes me go, oh, please, what is the most powerful thing you got? Oh, no, I'm so scared. Bring it, a finger of death at me? Oh, no, what do I do? No, you.
You know what I just thought of with that is literally just think of like Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Oh, when takes the lightning,
shoot it back at him.
Because that,
perfect.
I give for flavor purposes, just imagine like you're just faking like you're hurting yourself, like, oh, the pain. You're like, wait, and
somebody call an ambulance.
Yeah,
but not for me.
But not for me. If you just had the biggest just ham in your party doing this, it would be an absolute wonderful time to experience. We have one of those in our family that would just absolutely, and I would have absolute fun with this as well. Anyway, on to the actual mechanic, Rabbit Trail. Anyway,
worth it.
Our other slogan, aside from asterisk, as always, is just today's Rabbit Trail. Anyway, the fact that you have the opportunity to redirect an attack, especially if you just watched in the previous round, your sorcerer friend get walloped for 48 damage by this big hulking ogre, just smack him on top of the head. You're like, oh, I'm not going to take that if he comes at me with that. And mechanically being able to not just counterspell something, because counterspell is incredible. You're not just canceling it, you're putting it back on them. Again, it's the same reason why I love hold and dominate spells, is because they can be absolute tide turner abilities. You're not just making their 35 damage to you 0, they're taking it instead. So it's a double swing back the other direction.
Action economy.
Yeah, again, there are some limitations again on uses because the capstone is a once per short or long rest for either of the options. Right. So that's really the only limitation there. And some of the other damage types like radiant, it's not common, but it is powerful if you can get it. So there are some limitations there. So it did hold it from being just, but we still went with a 4.5 out of a possible 5 on the combat side of things because again, there's a ton of choices for your wild shape. And some very, very potent abilities on it.
Yeah, definitely. And some thoughts on some of that, but I'll just transition into synergy because it does overlap as it usually does.
We do that.
So you do get some good defensive options for sure with shield, for example. The diamond skin can come into play. Druids can have issues depending on how strict your DM is with their ability to wear metal armor and things like that versus like just reflavoring things. So if you do have that kind of issue early on, it can help to have that extra potential for defensive options. Yep. And I think one of the biggest things that it's going to really help a lot, because you do, with the wild shapes, have extra options, and you get 3 options again, as Alex said, instead of just one alternative option. So it gives you more added utility for that. But also, I think there's a lot of internal synergy built in with this because of, for example, the resistant... to the different, well, not resistance, but advantage for the different conditions.
I said the same thing earlier too.
It's because it's resistant crystals or resistant gems. Yeah. So
you're resisting the effects, but mechanically it's advantage against kind of thing.
So with that, it's going to help you actually maintain your concentration better for your wild shapes, for your spells. You are a druid, and a lot of your spells are concentration based. So that's going to actually help you quite a bit with your spell casting because, again, 3 of those effects are going to incapacitate you, which does not end well for your concentration. So there is that.
And this druid and cleric players have an absolute bevy of concentration spells at our disposal. So keeping that alive is very important.
And of course, too, with the capstone, again, just the amount of utility and momentum that can bring to just swing back a big spell like that could be absolutely massive. Yeah. With this, we went ahead with a 4 out of 5 for the synergy. Lots of great options. But again, there's a lot of limitations for some of these. They are limited with their uses per day or per short rest. So with that, it does kind of hold back, I feel like, the synergy a little bit. But the fact that it is so potent when those things do hit does really help buff up that combat score.
Yeah, the only challenge you're going to run into with, again, a once per short rest use is this the time to use this ability or not? Because... nothing feels worse than what you think is going to be the worst thing you're going to see in that combat. It's like, oh, here's 35 damage to my face. I'd rather not take this backhand from this ogre. And then, this other creature hops out of the bush and it's a spellcaster and he lobs a big spell at you that does like 65. And you're like, no.
Exactly. Again, if you're really interested in these kind of more out there types of settings, please let us know.
Because we do like the change of pace, but if you guys don't want to see it as much, there's no point in us doing it.
And this one's kind of like on the. It's not full sci-fi. It's still staying in the fantasy theme with like arcane crystals.
We're wading out there into that water a little bit, but we haven't like hold your nose. Here goes the cold water.
Full on cyberpunk. So if you are interested in seeing some more unique stuff like that, please let us know. But we just thought these were cool, so we're doing them, which is usually how we pick stuff. Thanks again to our sponsors. Make sure you guys check them out. We'll have the links down below for all of that. As usual, always helps support us, support them. Fantastic. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell notifications so you know when all of our new videos are coming out. And as always, thanks for watching. Elementara is an exciting new sourcebook from the creators of the Crystalpunk setting. It features elemental manipulation that enhances how you build characters and adventures. Choose one of 7 elements to awaken within your character, using 150 plus new spells and martial techniques. Then, unleash your elemental powers in your game world or in the fantastic world of Azara, featuring 7 nations built around a gargantuan elemental anomaly. Back the Kickstarter today. Link in the description. Thanks for our sponsors, Hit Point Press. Check out their big bad bundles. Unique, cool monsters, history, lore, everything you need to throw these villains into your campaign.
And it's a great way to get around your players that like to metagame, or if they do it accidentally, like I tend to do at times. Maybe they think they know what this monster is by the description. They can create some fun opportunities and unique things to throw at even your most experienced players would not see coming.
Check out the link in the description down below.